The distant planet Velora Prime floated in the darkness of space like a jewel surrounded by a halo of stars. Its surface shimmered with oceans that reflected the sunlight in shades of silver and green, while cities of crystal and metal rose in elegant towers, hovering above the planet like delicate glass sculptures. The Velorians, the planet's inhabitants, had spent centuries perfecting a civilization that valued order, intelligence, and elegance above all else. Every building, every street, and even the way people walked carried purpose and grace. To outsiders, Velora Prime was perfection in motion, and its people were proud of it. Yet in this world of strict rules and rigid structure, there was one being who did not quite fit the mold. Princess Lysera, the youngest daughter of Velora's ruling family, carried herself with the same regal poise as everyone expected, but her mind wandered in ways her tutors and counselors found strange. She spent hours examining the details of her world, wondering why certain rules existed and what life would be like beyond the floating cities. Her curiosity often led her to secluded areas of the palace, where the marble floors met the soft glow of bioluminescent gardens, and where no advisor dared to follow. The calm of Velora Prime was disrupted one morning when a small blip appeared on the planetary sensors. At first, the Council believed it was a technical error. The Velorians had observed distant stars and known of the many civilizations scattered across galaxies. None of them had seen humans before, or any species that traveled so recklessly without a purpose dictated by logic. A vessel appeared sleek and compact, clearly built for exploration rather than war. By midday, the council convened in the high chambers. Princess Lysera attended, though her presence was more a matter of courtesy than necessity. Her father, King Thaler, spoke with calm authority, though tension underlined his words. The human ship is in orbit. It is unprecedented. We must decide how to respond. Lysera, however, felt something unfamiliar stirring within her, curiosity. She wanted to see these humans for herself, not as a threat, but as a puzzle. Hours later, the human ship descended, landing on a reinforced platform outside the palace gates. Its smooth surface reflected the green light of the Velorian sun. From its entry bay, a single human emerged. He was tall, with broad shoulders, and carried himself with a quiet confidence that seemed out of place amidst the meticulous surroundings of Velora Prime. His uniform was simple but functional, with no adornments or badges except a small insignia of Earth, a planet barely known to the Velorians. The human introduced himself as Commander Elias Kane, the lead envoy of the human exploratory fleet. He stepped forward, hands visible and empty, a gesture that signaled peace. The Velorian guards tensed, but his calm demeanor seemed to ease them slightly. Princess Lysera watched from the balcony as the human moved. There was something about the way he carried himself, the steady rhythm of his steps, and the sharp clarity in his eyes. When he looked up at her, there was a directness that startled her, not just politeness or curiosity, but recognition, as if he saw her beyond her crown and the perfection around her. During the formal introduction, King Thaler spoke carefully. Commander Kane, Velora Prime is honored by your presence. You come to a civilization that values logic, precision, and order above all. What is it you seek? Others debated the potential benefits of cooperation. Princess Lysera, however, was silent, captivated by the human's presence. There was no arrogance in his voice, no condescension, only confidence that stemmed from knowing one's own abilities and purpose. Over the next few days, Elias was granted limited access to the palace and its gardens. Princess Lysera was assigned as his guide, a decision that she did not question, though she suspected her father wanted her monitored as much as she wanted to observe him. They walked together through corridors filled with light, past pools that reflected the skies, and along terraces that overlooked the floating cities. Lysera noticed the small, human gestures that seemed so foreign to Velorian culture. Elias tilted his head slightly when listening, sometimes smiled in ways the Velorians considered casual, and often asked questions that seemed obvious but revealed deeper understanding. When he looked at the intricate carvings of the palace, he did not simply admire them. He questioned their purpose, their design, and what they meant for those who lived there. Why build this terrace so high if the wind makes it dangerous? He asked once, gesturing toward a balcony lined with crystal railings. Lysera frowned slightly. It is tradition. Safety is ensured by calculations. There is no danger. And yet she did not feel fear or anger, only intrigue. Over the following week, Elias demonstrated the human capacity for creativity. In the palace's science labs, He suggested new approaches to energy distribution, drawing simple diagrams on transparent screens. He used objects found in the lab to illustrate his point, improvising with materials the Valorians considered unsuitable. The scientists, initially skeptical, watched as his ideas produced unexpected efficiency improvements. Princess Lysera followed his work closely. While the council marveled at his intellect, she noticed something else: the way he observed people, not just machines or systems. When a young Valorian assistant stumbled during a demonstration, Elias did not scold or correct harshly. Instead, he guided gently, adjusting the assistant's approach and encouraging them to see the problem differently. "It's not about failing," he said softly to the young Valorian. "It's about learning faster." Unlike Valorians, who valued formality and detachment, humans seemed capable of connecting without barriers. She felt exposed under his eyes, yet comfortable, as if he saw her true self rather than the crown she wore. One evening, as the twin moons of Velora Prime rose over the horizon, Lysera and Elias stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The air was filled with a faint hum of energy from the floating towers, and the sky shimmered with soft blue and green lights reflected from the oceans. Lysera spoke first, almost reluctantly. "Why do you look at me like that, human? Not as a princess or someone important, but as me. Not by her tutors, not by her guards, and certainly not by the council, who treated her as a figurehead of Velora's perfection. Yet this human, in mere days, had looked past everything to notice her as a person." The next morning, news arrived that a small human research vessel had been damaged near Velora Prime's orbit due to a minor meteor storm. While Valorian defenses had been adequate, the council debated whether to intervene. Elias volunteered immediately, coordinating with the Valorian fleet. His approach was not commanding but collaborative, merging human adaptability with Valorian precision. Lysera watched him again, mesmerized. He was fearless but not reckless, strategic but willing to improvise. And through it all, he remained calm, confident, and aware of those around him. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. When the mission succeeded without loss, the council lauded Elias' ingenuity. Lysera, however, found herself applauding silently for something less tangible: the courage of a human to see the world differently, to challenge convention with respect and insight. As the day ended, Lysera walked beside him in the palace gardens. She felt a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. You make everything seem different," she admitted. Elias glanced at her, his gaze steady and reassuring. "Different doesn't mean wrong, it just means there's more to discover." For the first time, she wondered if Velora Prime's perfection might not be enough. Perhaps there was more to life, more to leadership, more to herself than what tradition had dictated. And she knew, without doubt, that the human standing beside her had already begun to change the course of her life, and perhaps the course of her entire world. The success of the rescue mission had brought Commander Elias Kane even closer to Princess Lysera, though neither of them spoke openly about it. The council, impressed but cautious, began to realize that this human was not like any other species they had encountered. He did not rely solely on technology or strategy, yet he had a way of turning impossible situations into achievable outcomes. It fascinated the Valorians, and it intrigued Lysera in ways she could not explain. For days, Lysera observed Elias as he moved through the palace, interacting with Valorian scholars, engineers, and even the palace guards. He asked questions that seemed ordinary, yet they carried insight. He would point out small inefficiencies or suggest ways to make the machinery run smoother, and the Valorian scientists, initially skeptical, began to follow his lead. They had never seen someone so adaptable, so willing to think outside the established rules without disrespecting their ways. One afternoon, the palace alarm rang, piercing the calm corridors. The Valorian council scrambled as reports came in that a rival faction, the Dravani, had launched a covert attack on one of the floating cities near the equator. Their ships were fast and their tactics unorthodox. The council panicked, expecting chaos and destruction. Lysera, however, instinctively sought Elias. He had been in the gardens watching the shifting sunlight over the pools when the alert sounded. He did not flinch. Instead, he turned to Lysera with a calm expression. "We need to move quickly, but we must think clearly," he said. "Panic will not save anyone." The council members, though initially resistant, listened to him as he suggested coordinating with Valorian defense ships in a new formation, one that combined their precise firepower with his adaptive strategies. The Dravani attack escalated quickly. Their ships darted through Velora's orbit, targeting energy hubs and communication arrays. The Velorian fleet fired back, but their traditional methods were predictable. Elias, standing on the command platform beside Lysera, instructed them to adjust in real time, to anticipate the enemy's unpredictability instead of merely reacting. Princess Lysera watched, amazed, as Velorian ships turned, shifted, and adapted in ways that even their most experienced commanders had never thought possible. Elias moved among them like a conductor leading an orchestra, blending human ingenuity with Velorian discipline. At one point, a Dravani ship broke through the outer defenses and headed straight for the city. Velorian shields could not react fast enough. Without hesitation, Elias directed a small squad of human-controlled drones, improvising a net of energy barriers to intercept it. The ship was destroyed before it could reach the city, and the Velorians could only stare in disbelief. After the battle subsided, the council members were both impressed and uneasy. Humans were dangerous, they concluded, but in a different way than they had feared. Lysera, however, saw something else entirely. She saw courage, ingenuity, and a kind of brilliance that went beyond technology. Elias did not rely on Velorian protocols. He relied on thought, creativity, and an instinctive understanding of possibility. As the night settled over Velora Prime, Lysera found herself walking alone with Elias in the palace gardens. The air was cool, carrying the scent of alien blossoms that glowed faintly in the moonlight. She was quiet for a long moment, trying to find the words. You risked so much today," she finally said, her voice almost a whisper. "Not because it was your duty, but because you chose to." And the way he looked at her, steady, unwavering, and yet gentle, made her heart beat faster than it had in years. Over the next few days, Elias continued to show the Velorians the strength of humanity in small, unexpected ways. He noticed that some workers in the energy facilities were fatigued by the repetitive routines, and he suggested minor changes that increased efficiency while respecting their schedules. He encouraged the palace gardeners to experiment with new plant combinations, blending Velorian flora in ways that had never been tried. The results were not only functional but beautiful. Lysera found herself drawn to his energy, his perspective, and the simplicity with which he saw the world. She began to spend more time in his presence, sometimes asking questions about Earth, sometimes observing how he approached problems with calm determination. She began to realize that what mesmerized her was not just his skill, but his humanity, his ability to connect, to adapt, and to act with courage without losing empathy. One afternoon, Elias took her to a viewing platform high above the city. From there, the vast landscape of Velora Prime stretched out like a living mosaic. "Your people have built something incredible here," he said. "But I can see how it could also feel confining." She thought of the council, the expectations placed on her, and the careful life she had always led. And she realized he was right. There was more to life than order. There was curiosity, courage, and the freedom to choose. The following days brought a new challenge. Scouts reported that a Dravani cell had infiltrated one of the smaller cities, attempting sabotage. The council panicked, debating whether to use overwhelming force or to negotiate. Lysera, remembering Elias' calm confidence, sought his advice. He suggested a plan that was both daring and simple. Instead of direct confrontation, they would use observation and understanding to anticipate the enemy's movements, then act decisively when the moment was right. He explained it to the Velorian commanders, blending logic and human intuition. The mission was tense. Lysera stayed at the control center with him, watching the city below as scouts moved through the streets. Elias directed small teams with precision, using the human ability to improvise when plans changed unexpectedly. At one point, a building housing critical energy supplies was about to be destroyed. Without hesitation, he instructed a small group to reroute the energy flow and neutralize the threat. When the operation concluded successfully, the Velorian Council was stunned. They had never seen such coordination, ingenuity, and courage combined. And Lysera realized that the human beside her had done more than save a city. He had challenged everything she thought she knew about strength, leadership, and intelligence. Later that evening, she found herself walking with him in the gardens once more. The bioluminescent flowers glowed softly around them, and the air was filled with the quiet hum of energy from the city below. She stopped and turned to him, her voice hesitant but sincere. "You change everything you touch," she said. Not just the city or the people, but me. I feel different when I'm with you. I only show what you already possess. People whispered about his ingenuity, his bravery, and the calm way he inspired others. Scientists and engineers began experimenting with ideas that Elias had suggested. Soldiers adopted new tactics, and even the palace staff found themselves thinking differently about problem-solving. But it was not just the people who were changing. Princess Lysera felt a transformation within herself. She began questioning old protocols, seeking new perspectives, and embracing the idea that rules were tools, not limits. And through it all, Elias remained a steady presence, showing her that courage, creativity, and empathy were strengths that could reshape not just cities, but entire civilizations. One night, as she gazed at the stars above, Lysera realized something profound. Humans, despite being considered primitive, carried a spark that Valorians had long overlooked, a spark of possibility, of adaptability, of courage. And she understood that this spark, embodied in the human standing beside her, was capable of changing everything she had ever known. She turned to him, her voice soft, almost a whisper. I used to think humans were unpredictable, dangerous even. But now I see you are remarkable. It was more than admiration. It was respect, trust, and a budding connection that defied the boundaries of their worlds. As they stood together, overlooking the city, the distant hum of Velora Prime's energy systems beneath their feet, Lysera realized that this human had already begun to change not just her perspective, but the destiny of her people. And in that realization, she felt a spark of excitement, a spark that promised new adventures, challenges, and the possibility of a future that neither humans nor Velorians had dared to imagine. The warning came suddenly, echoing across the palace halls. The Dravani had launched a full-scale assault on Velora Prime, their fleet larger and more aggressive than anyone had expected. Alarms blared, and the Velorian Council erupted into chaos. Ships were deployed in haste, energy barriers activated, and every defense system was brought online. Yet even with all their technology, the Velorians knew they faced a formidable threat. Princess Lysera stood beside Commander Elias Kane on the command platform, her eyes scanning the holographic displays of the approaching fleet. Unlike the Council, she did not panic. The human beside her moved with calm purpose, analyzing the situation, calculating strategies, and anticipating the enemy's movements. Elias turned to her. We can win this, he said, his voice steady. But we cannot rely on what they expect. We need to combine human adaptability with Velorian precision. The Council relied on strict formations and predictable maneuvers. Elias proposed something different, fluid strategies that would shift in real time, using both technology and human ingenuity. As the Dravani fleet drew closer, Velorian ships followed the new plan. They split into smaller, more flexible units, guided by Elias, commands, and the adaptive calculations of Velorian tacticians. The humans and Velorians worked together in perfect synchronization, each complementing the other's strengths. The first clash was intense. Dravani ships struck fast and without warning, targeting energy hubs and communication lines. Velorian defenses, though technologically superior, struggled to adapt to the unpredictable strikes. Elias moved among the command stations, guiding the fleet with both insight and instinct. He anticipated enemy maneuvers, redirecting ships and creating traps that forced the Dravani into disadvantageous positions. Princess Lysera watched in awe as the plan unfolded. Her people, normally so rigid in thought, responded to Elias' guidance with precision, improvising when necessary. They were not just fighting. They were thinking differently, adapting to the chaos, and seeing possibilities where there had been none before. At one point, a massive Dravani cruiser broke through the outer defenses, heading directly for the capital city. Traditional Velorian tactics would have delayed it, but not stopped it. Elias acted immediately, devising a daring plan. He instructed a group of Velorian ships to form a moving barrier while smaller, agile units attacked from unexpected angles. Simultaneously, human drones created diversions, drawing the enemy into the trap. The battle was tense, the cruiser weaving and dodging, yet Elias' strategy worked. The enemy ship was destroyed just before it could reach the city, and the Council watched in disbelief. They had relied on precision and calculation, but it was human creativity and courage that had turned the tide. In the midst of the chaos, Lysera realized the truth of what she had felt all along. Humans were not bound by rules or tradition in the same way as Velorians. They could improvise, adapt, and take risks when necessary. It was not recklessness. It was a unique form of intelligence, one that could overcome even the most formidable challenges. As the battle raged, Elias spotted another Dravani squadron attempting to bypass defenses and attack a civilian sector. Without hesitation, he and Lysera coordinated a counterattack. She felt her heart pound as they issued orders, calculated trajectories, and adapted in real time. For the first time, she was not just observing him, she was actively participating in his strategy, seeing the world through his perspective. The counterattack succeeded, neutralizing the threat before it could harm innocent lives. Lysera felt a surge of pride and admiration, not just for Elias, but for herself and her people, who had embraced this new way of thinking. The human spirit had inspired courage, ingenuity, and collaboration that had changed the outcome of the battle. When the last Dravani ships were destroyed or forced to retreat, silence fell over the command platform. The Valorian Council stared in awe, struggling to comprehend what had just occurred. The planet had been saved not solely by technology, not solely by rules, but by the union of human creativity and Valorian discipline. Lysera turned to Elias, her eyes wide with emotion. You did this," she said softly. Elias shook his head. "We did this, humans, Valorians, together. We see the world differently, but together we can achieve more than either could alone." Leadership was not just about following tradition or maintaining perfection. It was about understanding, adapting, and inspiring others to rise to challenges they never thought they could face. In the days following the battle, Velora Prime began to heal. Cities repaired themselves, citizens returned to their daily lives, and the Council debated the lessons learned from the human approach. Scientists continued to experiment with Elias' methods, finding solutions to problems that had seemed unsolvable. Soldiers incorporated adaptive strategies into their training. The influence of humanity spread quietly, yet profoundly, across the planet. Lysera spent time with Elias each day, learning not just from his strategies, but from his perspective on life. He taught her that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. That creativity was not just imagination, but the ability to see possibilities and act on them. That leadership was not control, but the ability to inspire and empower others. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the horizon, Lysera and Elias stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The lights shimmered like 1,000 tiny stars reflected on the oceans below. She felt a sense of calm and clarity she had never known. "You've changed everything," she said softly. Elias looked at her, his eyes reflecting the moon's light. "I only showed you what was already here," he replied. "You had the strength, the courage, and the vision. I just helped you see it." In the following weeks, Elias continued to work with the Valorians, training leaders, sharing strategies, and fostering collaboration. The bond between humans and Valorians grew stronger, built on mutual respect, understanding, and a shared vision of what could be achieved. Lysera found herself growing not just as a leader, but as a person, embracing qualities she had long admired in humans: adaptability, empathy, and daring courage. One quiet night, Lysera and Elias walked together in the palace gardens. The bioluminescent flowers glowed softly around them, and the air was warm with the scents of alien blossoms. She stopped and looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why do you look at me like that, human?" she asked, echoing the question she had first spoken weeks ago. Elias turned to her, his expression calm but filled with warmth. "Because I see you," he said simply. "Not just as a princess, not just as a leader, but as who you truly are. And you are remarkable." Cities grew, innovation thrived, and the people embraced new ways of thinking. Humans and Valorians worked side by side, learning from each other, creating a civilization that combined the best of both worlds. And through it all, Lysera and Elias remained a steady presence for each other. Their bond was not only personal but symbolic, a bridge between two species, a reminder that courage, creativity, and empathy could overcome even the greatest challenges. As the planet settled into a new era of cooperation and growth, Lysera often found herself standing on the palace balcony, gazing at the stars. She would think of Earth, of the humans who carried a spark of possibility, and of Elias, who had shown her that the human spirit was a force capable of inspiring courage, changing lives, and shaping the destiny of entire civilizations. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant hues over the floating cities, Lysera turned to Elias with a quiet smile. "Humans, they are unpredictable, dangerous, yet extraordinary. I understand now why they are admired across galaxies." She realized that Velora Prime's future was no longer bound by tradition alone. With humans and Velorians working together, the possibilities were limitless. And she understood that the humans standing beside her had not only saved her planet but had inspired a new era of courage, ingenuity, and hope. The Dravani threat had been defeated, but the true victory was something more profound. It was the awakening of potential, human potential, Velorian potential, and the combined strength of two civilizations daring to imagine a better future. As Lysera looked at Elias, she felt a quiet certainty. Together, they had proven that courage, creativity, and empathy were universal forces, capable of shaping destiny across the stars. And in that realization, she felt something deeper, a connection, a trust, and a shared vision that promised adventures, challenges, and triumphs beyond anything either species had ever known. For Princess Lysera and Commander Elias Kane, the story was not just about a battle or a victory. It was about the power of humanity, the courage to act, the willingness to imagine, and the ability to inspire change wherever it was needed. And above all, it was about the spark that could turn curiosity into courage, and courage into a future bright with possibility.